This video was brought to you by Squarespace. I couldn't find my black tie. So at the time of this recording, a few Switch games are still trickling in, but I think we can say for all intents and purposes, the Nintendo Switch generation has officially come to a close. And what a generation it was. This was the generation when Nintendo's home consoles and handhelds merged into one perfect being, Dark Crystal style. The Switch's form factor felt simultaneously like something new and innovative and something completely inevitable. The prospect of playing Nintendo's biggest games, either on the TV or on the go, ignited the kind of fire we hadn't seen since the Wii days, and we didn't know if we would ever see again. The Switch changed their fortunes entirely. Not only pulled them up from their deepest, darkest slump ever, but rocketed them to levels of success they had never so much as tasted. But it wasn't just the hardware that did it. To put it simply, Nintendo brought the games. They dished them out fast and they dished them out hot. The Switch generation saw not only a near constant stream of releases, in so many cases, these were bigger games than ever, games that appealed to wider audiences than ever. Nintendo consistently swung for the fences, and it made for an absolutely unforgettable generation. And now that it's done, it's finally time for me to tackle the Herculean task of deciding which Switch games I enjoyed most. Among this enormous library of quality titles, which were the ones that defined the generation for me? Well, I think I've got it figured out. Thing is, though, it was impossible to just stick with first-party games. So, as a little treat, I've decided to give you two top 10 lists in one convenient package. So before we get to the big stuff, let's talk about the games that are available on other platforms, but I played first on Switch, and greatly benefited from the handheld form factor. Let us begin. Whoosh! Out of all the games on this list, SteamWorld Heist 2 is the one I played most recently. That means I've had less time to really process my relationship with it and consider if it belongs on this list. But at the same time, it's getting harder and harder to find games that really click with me. They're out there, it just takes a bit more work to find them. So the fact that in the year 2026, I became completely obsessed with SteamWorld Heist 2 and just played it for dozens of hours and loved every single second, I think that says something. The first SteamWorld Heist was already phenomenal, but this is a perfect sequel that improves upon and expands basically everything. This is a turn-based, cover-based tactical shooter. Manually aiming shots and lining up these crazy ricochets is immensely satisfying. Units have all these unique, super useful attacks and abilities. Small maps and generous movement range make for shorter, breezier missions. The characters, the humor, the overall writing, it's all very good. And now you get to drive a little submarine around a great big sea, exploring and finding stuff and plundering enemy ships. I mean, it's a near perfect game. I think my only actual complaint is that it might be a little too long. Which, I mean, like, if you're gonna have a problem, that's the one to have. Oh no, there's too much content. Again, it's still technically early days, but I think SteamWorld Heist 2 is my favorite tactics game of all time. It's just a marvelously well-made game that I had so much fun with. Hot take, Undertale is a good game. It's low on this list, I think, because it didn't quite hook me in that way a lot of these other games did, where I'm just ravenous to keep playing and I keep coming back for more playthroughs. And yet that initial experience running through on neutral, then unlocking the ultimate pacifist ending was just unforgettable. It is a dazzling example of doing so much with so little, delivering such a funny, heart-wrenching, and wholly unique story in such an unassuming little package. It's constantly subversive. It plays with these long-standing video game ideas we all take for granted. It makes you rethink the moral implications of being a video game hero. And it's packed with surprises. Every other moment, it's another gag, another bit, another little wink. In combat in particular, you just never know when it's gonna go completely off the rails again, send you into another totally unexpected direction. It may be the single most clever game I have ever played. I was just shaking my head the whole time, just too darn clever. All of this cleverness, this creativity, this heart to be found in such an odd little game, just such a weird little indie game, largely made by one guy. I have played games made by hundreds and hundreds of people with budgets in the hundreds of millions, and yet it's games like Undertale that truly illuminate what video games can accomplish as a unique artistic medium. What can I say? SteamWorld games are just good. Dig 2 is another perfect sequel that takes everything good about the original and blows it up. It's basically a Metroidvania where you dig down. You navigate these mines, collecting treasure, fighting enemies, avoiding traps, looking for secrets. The grid-based digging system is very well thought out. You've got to be very careful and strategic. And of course, you earn new abilities as you go, and you can use your money to upgrade yourself. This is one of those Metroidvanias where your toolkit starts out so modest, and filling it out and upgrading everything is crazy rewarding. You become so powerful, so much more mobile. It feels to me like a game that's just about perfectly designed. From start to finish, it never stops delivering. But what makes it even better is its replayability. It's just the right length, and much of the map is procedurally generated. So with each playthrough, it's just as fun to explore, just as satisfying to work through. Actually, this is one of the only games, maybe the only game I've played where I rolled the credits for the first time and immediately dove into a fresh file without even getting out of my chair. And indeed, I have played it several times since. SteamWorld Dig 2 is like a tall glass of lemonade on a hot day. Every drop goes down easy, and when you get to the end, you smile and go, ah, that was great. I could go for another one. Another Metroidvania for you. And you know, I don't have a lot of underrated games to recommend to people. I've not really played a lot of lesser-known titles I consider to be hidden gems, but Yoku's Island Express is probably that game for me that I just gotta tell everyone about. Mixing up game ideas and genres is so much fun, especially when you mix something totally unexpected with something very well established. And I think the weirder the combination, the more amazing it is when you pull it off. And this game right here posits, what if Metroidvania, but pinball? Yeah, if you told me to make a search action game with a big map, but you're basically a pinball and there are paddles everywhere, I wouldn't know where to start. And yet these devs have conjured magic here. They didn't just do this weird idea justice, they managed to create a genuinely compelling game in its own right. The world is wonderful to explore, it's filled with all these charming characters and creatures, it's positively stunning to look upon. And sure, every once in a while the pinball element can get a little finicky, but for the most part, it just works. And it's incredibly fun. It is such a bummer this game didn't sell enough to be considered a success. But I like to think at least I've done my part to spread the good news. Longtime viewers may remember me bringing up this game a number of times. And you know what? This probably will not be the last. Yoku's Island Express is too good a game not to share. Indie devs do what Nintendo don't. In the absence of a true follow-up to the classic Paper Mario games, we have seen a number of pretty darn good Paper Mario-likes. But for me, Bug Fables was the very first game to truly scratch that itch. Instead of having you acquire a whole cast of partners, it features just 3 main characters, but this is a strength. Mechanically, it's great to always have all 3 in battle. Their unique abilities work really well together. This is very much Paper Mario-style combat, but some thoughtful little changes and additions actually raise the bar in my eyes. The strategy is even deeper, and the challenge level is much higher. Then these 3 characters have such marvelous chemistry. The writing is delightful. Each one of them has a distinct backstory and motivation and all that good stuff. It's very impressive that such a small team of people could have turned out an adventure that feels this huge, that actually rivals the scope of the games that inspired it. And it's an adventure that doesn't just ape that inspiration, but uses it as a foundation to build an experience that feels simultaneously familiar and fresh. It is unabashedly emulating Paper Mario, and yet it's Bug Fables. It actually improves upon the formula in some great ways while firmly establishing its own unique identity, its own unique vibe. Sure, it stumbles in a few places, it's certainly not perfect, but it's close enough. And whatever Paper Mario likes come next, this will always be the first game to capture that same magic for me. Halfway through the list, I want to give you another honorable mention. Planet of Lana is another one that I might have played too recently to know for sure where it should place in a ranking, and it's a relatively short game that I probably won't return to a bunch of times, but I cannot deny the very pure and intense enjoyment of that first experience. It's everything I could want from a cinematic platformer. The characters with their fictitious language are so charming, the otherworldly visuals and sweeping score are breathtaking, the puzzles are elegantly designed, so simple yet so satisfying, the overall story and theming tick all the right boxes for me, and the emotional impact of the experience was heavy indeed. I can confidently say that no other game has squeezed more tears out of these eyeballs. Like nothing else has come close. Planet of Lana didn't quite grab a spot on this list, but I had to mention it anyway, and I hope that says something about how much I enjoyed it. Before we continue discussing my very favorite Nintendo Switch video games, a quick reminder that this video was brought to you by Squarespace. You know, you look like you could use a website. I don't know, I just got a hunch. I don't know what kind of website, but it doesn't really matter. It could be for your business, like an info page, a storefront, portfolio, or it could be something personal, like a blog, a place to show off your poetry, a 90s style fan page about Kim Possible. Whatever the case, Squarespace's intuitive builder makes it super duper easy, even if you've never made a website in your life. No coding required, it's all easy to figure out, easy to use. I mean, even I made a site, and you know, that's saying something. My blog, Arlo Recommends, is super easy to maintain as well. I just draft up my posts and schedule them all to go out whenever, and it'll even generate social media posts for me automatically if I want. Wow. Squarespace offers many powerful extensions if your site needs a little something extra, as well as a lovely suite of built-in analytics so you can see how your site is doing. To try out Squarespace for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Arlo to save 10% off your first website or domain. And now for today's recommendation, no salt seasoning. Another Costco wreck. I don't even care that it's got no salt. That's not even the point. This is just a great seasoning mix. I hear it's apparently kind of equivalent to Mrs. Dash. Goes great on everything. I would actually say it pairs best with a little salt. Thanks again to Squarespace. Now, here are some more Nintendo Switch video games I think are good. The Resident Evil Revelations collection contains both games in one convenient package. And this one's a little bit of a cheat because I did actually play Revelations 1 on my 3DS. A lot. But I picked up the collection primarily because I hadn't played 2 yet. I do love me some Resident Evil, and these games are some pretty darn good Resident Evil. Not series best, especially with the mainline games reaching such crazy heights in recent years, but still highly enjoyable. Gameplay, design, monsters, story, cheesy dialogue, all solid. However, it wasn't the campaigns that kept me hooked. Raid mode, co-op raid mode most of all, is what made this collection so special. I sank countless hours into the first game's raid mode on my 3DS, and Revelations 2's raid mode is better in every conceivable way. All the maps and enemies from the base game, and even beyond, split up into arcadey challenge levels with all sorts of wacky enemy buffs and combinations, currency to earn and spend on weapons and parts and upgrades and characters and abilities. Like any Resident Evil game, the core gameplay is so much fun. So when you wrap it up in this kind of package with tons of levels and tons of room to get stronger and System Link to play co-op with friends, you are looking at many, many, many hours of entertainment. And at the time of this recording, I am still positively baffled that we haven't gotten another Resident Evil game with a raid mode, and that Mercenaries is still like all they seem to be interested in doing. If you like killing unlimited zombies, but hate doing so under a time limit, like me, you owe it to yourself to play Revelations 2. Shout out to my buddy Brian, who will tell you the same, albeit a little more loudly and angrily. A person's first Monster Hunter is a very special thing. After not understanding the series at all for many a year, I finally gave Rise a try, and to say it clicked would be a serious understatement. The game grabbed me and pulled me deep, deep into its depths. I fell in love with its combat, which seemed so sluggish and difficult at first, but soon revealed itself to be deep and thoughtful, requiring a delicate balance of preparation and observation and on-the-fly decision-making and twitchy reflexes. And man, smacking monsters on the head just feels so darn good. The monsters are animated and behave so organically. It really feels like you're hunting down these living, breathing creatures. Each and every encounter feels meaningful. And then there is that delicious, exquisite feedback loop. Hunting to gather materials, to craft better gear, to hunt stronger monsters, to get better materials, to craft better gear, and so on, and so on. And all these little supplementary systems, all these ways to beef up your hunter, to customize your build, and then all these completely distinct weapons to choose from, something for every playstyle. Just pick up a new weapon and suddenly it's like you're playing a new game. No, I really mean it. Once Monster Hunter Rise got its hooks in me, all I wanted to do was play it. I just forever and ever, make Monster Hunter my full-time job, please. The hours playing it simply melted away into nothing, and playing with friends was some of the most fun I had on my Switch. Full stop. A Metroidvania on this list? I don't believe you. Well, believe it, sister! Blasphemous is another one of those peanut butter and chocolate kind of situations. Metroidvania Souls-likes weren't nearly as common when it came out, so this was the kind of experience my very soul had been yearning for without even knowing it. And right now you're probably like, Hollow Knight did it first? But you see, I need the disgusting monsters. I need the bosses to be these massive, grotesque horrors. I don't know why. No, seriously though, you've got the satisfying combat, the nasty bosses, you got the XP and upgrades, you've got this massive map. And the actual Metroidvania part is a little light. There aren't a ton of abilities that gate off progress, yet this means that you've got so much freedom to explore. Plunging into new territory and chaining together different branching paths and secrets without hitting a bunch of walls feels incredible. It's like the world just goes and goes and goes. And oh, the visuals, some of the finest pixel art I have ever seen in a game. So gorgeously rendered and animated, so much horrible, disgusting detail. I love it! And the game is really challenging, but ooh, perfectly so. Not so hard that I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall, but hard enough that rolling the credits feels like a real accomplishment. I feel like Blasphemous is just about as good as these kinds of games get. It's just about everything I could want from this mix of genres. Especially the bosses. They're just oh, ugh, I love it! You want to talk about games that hooked me. I mean, you really want to ask me about life-devouring games I never, ever wanted to put down? I played a good number of games like that on Switch, but the first game my mind always goes to is Stardew Valley. Very few games have grabbed me by the scruff of the neck like this one. I'd never actually seriously played a farming sim before, and I think many will agree that they don't get much better than this. Cleaning up and building a farm, caring for crops, slowly growing the whole operation, the money I make feeding directly into its further development. Already an enticing prospect. But then the game heaps on all these other activities. Fishing, foraging, exploring, relationships with the townfolk, fighting monsters and collecting ore in the mines. There are so many options, so many ways to play, so many goals to work toward. It feels like this unending buffet that just opens itself up to you and says, go nuts. And of course, this is a world that's just delightful to be in. Lovely pixel art, some of the finest music to ever grace a video game, just the most immaculate vibes, but with just a touch of poignancy here and there, just enough to add emotional depth to the experience. This game was where the Switch's handheld nature actually became a problem. I couldn't stop myself from picking it up, and the hours, oh, they flew by. They melted away like nothing. There was a time when it was genuinely impacting my life and livelihood. Like I was so miserably hooked. Since then, they've added a ton of additional content to the game, but I do not dare boot it up again. It's too dangerous. Stardew Valley is the ultimate cozy game. peak escapism. If I had to pick only one game to play for the rest of my life, I don't know what it would be, but this one would be very, very high on the list of contenders. My relationship with Dark Souls has evolved a lot over the years. When I first reviewed it, I found it to be a frustrating, clunky experience that was nevertheless compelling in its own way. Then when I put it in my Games of the Decade video, I admitted that, in retrospect, the experience had impacted me a lot more than I initially realized. And since then, my love for not only Dark Souls, but FromSoft games overall has fully blossomed. I have played Dark Souls many more times since that first playthrough. Most of them on Xbox rather than Switch, but that first time on Switch, it practically rewired my brain. Even if I didn't realize it at the time, it's basically impossible to sum up my thoughts here in this little blurb. They could probably fill up a book. I mean, there's the more obvious stuff. The vast, largely interconnected world and the way it plays with tension and release between the bonfires and the shortcuts. The combat that, again, seems clunky and sluggish at first, but when you meet it where it is, you see that it simply requires a level of patience and persistence you might not be used to. And them vibes, the locales dripping with atmosphere and unspoken history, the impossible architecture, the dark Western fantasy aesthetic with a Japanese flair, the grotesque monsters, I like those. There's a sense of mystery that hangs in the air at all times, a depth that I feel like I'll never reach the bottom of. But even more than all that, I've never played a game that felt like more of a philosophical lesson, that reflected life itself in such a way. Yes, the game is janky and obtuse. It does a terrible job of explaining its systems, if it tries at all. Some of the bosses are legitimately unfair. I was glued to a guide for much of that first experience. I would normally count these things against a game, and of course I did at first, but then that FromSoft Stockholm Syndrome took hold. Now, like an old coach who seemed like a tyrant, who I felt pushed me way too hard, now I see how much it grew me by always demanding a little more than I thought I could handle. It assaulted me with challenges, many of which felt impossible, but it also gave me a lot of tools to choose from. Look up a cheese strategy for a boss or a really strong build? That's valid. Knuckle down and learn its attack patterns until you can scrape out a victory? Also valid. However you get to the end, you're a stronger person for it. But the key is persistence. No other game has been as effective in teaching me the value of patience and concentration. Just like life, Dark Souls can be brutal and unfair. But when you meet it where it is, you learn that even the impossible can be possible. Sometimes even a cakewalk. Dark Souls isn't just one of the best games I've played on Switch. It's a contender for my favorite game of all time. Well, that's it for the third parties. Now it's time for the main event. Here are my top 10 favorite first-party Nintendo Switch games. Whoosh! There were several games I thought I would put on this list before Fire Emblem Three Houses. Yet when I looked back at my time with my Switch, I realized that Three Houses was one of those times I was really dialed in. Deeply invested, kind of obsessed for a bit. And there's plenty of good stuff to say about the tactical gameplay. It's a tried and true formula. It's such well-trodden ground that there's barely even anything to say about it. And here it's everything you could hope for. But really, it's all the stuff supporting that gameplay that made the experience special. I mean, the monastery it's basically the actual game. It's where all the interesting stuff happens. There are so many different activities to partake in, and it all allows you to strengthen and fine-tune your units in all these little ways. I normally get pretty overwhelmed when it comes to customizing characters and digging into all these deeper RPG systems like this, but I had a blast here. More than anything though, I just got sucked into the world, just the pure imagination and role play of it. This was my first Fire Emblem game, and I was surprised by the richness of the world building. There's a huge cast of characters, most of them recruitable as units, with not only a ton of dialogue between them and the main character, but between themselves in basically any combination. These people are fun and interesting to listen to, fun to learn about their backstories and everything. The writing is good, and just about every line is fully voice acted, with solid performances all around. I got so absorbed in this extra stuff, I basically treated the game like a life sim, so I ended up over-leveling hard and just like trivializing much of the experience, but I still enjoyed the heck out of my time with the game. And I know that if I ever get around to doing another run on a higher difficulty, I've got multiple entire new story branches to follow. That's a crazy amount of value in one game right there. At the time of this recording, Splatoon 3 is the latest entry in the series, and I do believe that it's superior to its predecessors. However, when I consider my own experiences with each game, so far, nothing comes close to the fun I had with Splatoon 2. The Switch had just launched, so getting together with friends to play via System Link was one of the most exciting video game experiences I had had in years, especially after several years, just many years, of not really knowing anyone else who played Nintendo games at all. The whole game was great. It improved upon the original in every conceivable way. The single-player campaign was once again pretty short, which was a little disappointing, but still immensely fun. Everything is well designed as a 3D Mario game. The new weapons and specials were really cool. They felt a lot more balanced. There was a ton to choose from. But you've probably noticed by now that I am much more of a co-op guy than a competitive guy. So for my money, Salmon Run was what made Splatoon 2 such a special experience. Big shout out to the whole Palooza Cruiser, my main Switch playing buddies at that time, as well as any viewers who heroically carried us through the higher ranks. You know who you are. This new mode was everything I loved about Splatoon, but now I could actually win sometimes. The teamwork involved, the unpredictability of each run, the often punishing difficulty, it all amounted to some untoppable play sessions. The kinds of pizza and soda late nights I hadn't had in an age. And we would even bring our TVs and monitors together to do a big, basically LAN party all in one room where we've each got our own TV. Oh man. It was a definite highlight of the whole Switch generation and one of those moments in the story of my life that I look back on very fondly. I'm sorry, I've always got to open with this when I talk about this game, but I don't even like 2D Mario games that much. I know, I'm a weirdo. I'm just not that into 2D platformers by themselves. I'm a brutish casual. I need a little bit more to keep me interested. And of course, I spent years being all grumpy about this super plain, basic Mario aesthetic that Nintendo was leaning on. Well, I don't know what happened at Nintendo, but it's like they made Super Mario Bros. Wonder just for me. It's literally everything I could want in a 2D Mario. The same top-of-the-line level design Nintendo is famous for, but now with a mechanic to add an unexpected twist to every stage. The twist has pretty much always been part of the Mario formula to an extent, but Wonder focuses on that part more than anything, and the result is a game that never stops surprising you. It's a game that's all about unpredictability, and because of this, it is one of the most creative Mario games ever. It's like the artists and the designers were given free rein to throw in every wacky idea they had. And this raw creativity, this joyous experimental spirit comes through in the visuals as well. These characters, once so sterile and homogenized, are suddenly uniquely stylized and bursting with personality. And the overall art style, I really think this is the best Mario has ever looked. It's clean and relatively simple. It's very much Mario, but with such flair, such polish, so modern. Then the world map uses a refreshing mix of styles. There are lots of different kinds of bonus levels to enjoy, and the badge system adds an unexpected layer of depth. The game is unfortunately not strictly a masterpiece, or at least it wasn't back when I played it on the original Switch. If the extra boss battles and challenge mode from the Switch 2 edition had been present from the start, I think this may have been the single best platformer I had ever played. Does that mean that it is now? I'm still not sure yet. Tropical Freeze is a really hard one to topple, but at least as the game was before the Switch 2 came around, as it was when I did play it on the original Switch, which is what we're talking about, it was still a treasure. It was still the precise 2D Mario experience I had been waiting much of my life for. After the fun but lacking Luigi's Mansion 2, 3 was a heavy rain after a drought. It's still somewhat linear, considering most floors have distinct themes and are meant to be completed in one go, but it's close enough to the original format and still feels enough like you're working through one large building. Character ghosts are back, giving the game a tremendous amount of personality. Meeting and puzzling out and eventually fighting and capturing each one is a delight. I would say that this sense of character, the art style, the atmosphere, the pristine graphics, just the overall visual presentation, this is where the game shines brightest. It is unbelievable that a Switch game can look this good. It's so polished and clean. It looks like an animated movie at times. And when you combine that presentation with the very tactile feel of sucking and blowing air, smashing objects and slurping up all the money and debris, flinging ghosts all over the place, it makes for a gameplay feel, a raw, moment-to-moment enjoyability that I think stands with Nintendo's best. It's a game I can pick up and the neurons just start firing, you know? And I love how much mechanical depth the game adds over the other two. The gameplay is largely the same, but now we've got so many fun tools to pull from, so many ways to interact with this world, and much more agency in combat. I am slightly mixed on the combat. Smashing ghosts feels really, really good, but it might be a little too useful, and so it kind of ends up taking up too much of each encounter. And my biggest gripe is that while it's such incredible fun collecting as much money as possible, you eventually learn that there's no real reward beyond a certain point, and there isn't even an upgrade system like in 2, so repeat playthroughs lack some of that magic. However, I feel that Luigi's Mansion 3 is very close to perfection. And considering this is a first-party Nintendo game we're talking about, that's saying something. It offers a truly unique gameplay experience, top-level Nintendo brand quality, and a wonderful vehicle for our beloved Luigi. I've been waiting for a 3D Kirby game pretty much since 3D became a thing. And yet, I could have never anticipated that the first one would be like this. In terms of visuals and theming and atmosphere, the team behind Kirby and the Forgotten Land went so above and beyond. A Kirby adventure through a post-apocalypse city is just not something I would have ever expected, and they pulled it off expertly. It creates an undercurrent of strangeness, this light but ever-present emotional depth. It allows the game to touch on darker themes whenever it's most impactful, but it never gets lost in its own sauce. It never betrays the uplifting spirit of Kirby. Joining him as he practically dances through this ruined and abandoned place is a testament to and constant reminder of his indomitable spirit. This bright, colorful, spunky story has been built upon the moldering remnants of a world so like our own. And I was initially disappointed that the game consisted of linear levels, offering a pretty exact 3D adaptation of the 2D style, but I soon found that this was strictly to the game's benefit. This gorgeous setting is perfectly framed at all times, offering a weirdly cinematic experience, enhancing the unexpected theming and grand scope. And still, this is a Kirby game first and foremost, and the gameplay carries an unmistakable familiarity when it comes to moveset and controls, while that third dimension lends it a pinch more depth, especially during boss encounters. In true Kirby fashion, each copy ability changes the gameplay dramatically, and the ability to upgrade them adds a very refreshing sense of progression. I've said it many times and I will say it again, all games are art to a degree, but I feel like Kirby and the Forgotten Land reaches an artistic level that is rare for Nintendo. You can mine so much meaning from its themes, you can appreciate its emotional and cinematic qualities, and yet it functions perfectly well as a simple, colorful experience to just have some fun with. Give it to a 5-year-old, they'll love it. It deftly operates within multiple realms of enjoyability. It is both a work of art and a silly kids game. Why does that feel so fitting for Kirby? Halfway through this list, we've got another honorable mention. I didn't want to give Bowser's Fury a whole slot since it's essentially a mini-campaign stapled onto a different game that I do like a lot, but not enough for a top 10 list. However, it would be wrong not to at least give it a shout out, seeing as we are talking about one of my very, very favorite experiences on Switch. It's the solid gameplay and ideas from 3D World, but juiced up and rebuilt into a completely unique sandbox experience. Fantastic vibes here, jetting around this huge, colorful ocean. The theme that plays when you jump on Plessy. Oh, that is that Nintendo spice right there. And then a gargantuan, goopy black Bowser spinning and rising into the air like the cocoon of some world-eating eldritch horror, and then like raining hell upon the earth while you're scrambling to fend him off. What is that? It's a system not without its flaws, but a totally unique gameplay angle for Mario, as well as a surprising dose of horror. And the absolute best part about Bowser's Fury? It's short. The quality and fun factor are so high, the sandbox format offers an invigorating sense of freedom, and you can 100% the whole thing in about 5 hours, making this one of the most replayable Nintendo experiences around. It is never not a good idea to sit down and blast through Bowser's Fury again. Pokemon was stuck in the doldrums. I had grown weary of the old format, iterating as it was so very gradually. But Pokemon Legends Arceus represented the greatest evolution the series had seen since the beginning, and as a result, offered me the most enjoyable Pokemon experience since I was a young lad. Not strictly open world, yet exploring these open zones filled with wild, wandering Pokemon felt fresh and exciting. The tried and true, yet fairly stale turn-based combat was invigorated by strong and agile styles and the new turn system, but it was the real-time elements and the overall flow that truly captivated me. Sneaking around, actually aiming and throwing Pokeballs both to catch and to send out my own team, needing to be cognizant of my character's own safety, seamlessly dropping in and out of battle. It lent the game a realism of sorts, a sense of immediacy that deepened the experience. It was the most immersed I had ever felt in the Pokemon world, and it felt like a real modernization at last. The realization of a childhood dream. And on top of that, putting the biggest focus on catching and research, giving us this whole progression system and all these checklists was genius. Then all these little modern conveniences like easy move swapping and the grit system and manual evolving, this all shaved off so much of the friction, which kept me exploring and fighting and catching for dozens and dozens of hours. I will admit the streamlining did remove a little bit of that original magic, and it was so much fun to build a team that ultimately not having at least a few more trainer battles was a pretty big bummer. And because of the evolving nature of the series, where many of these fresh new ideas have already been carried over to other games and even improved upon, I think there's not much chance I'll return to Legends Arceus, but I can't deny the importance of that initial experience. For a guy who's been in the Pokemon business since the early days, this really was a dream come true. They sure made us wait for a brand new mainline 2D Metroid, but boy, howdy did they deliver. I mean, just to get it out of the way, it's not perfect by any means. The way it weaves the player through its world represents some of the most intricate, complex level design I have ever seen. But this also means that if you deviate from that intended path or backtrack for items, it can be very easy to become disastrously lost. The wait for a more open-ended game like Super continues. And for a series known for its music, this title's OST is sorely lacking, verging occasionally into straight-up bad territory. Rarely, but it happens. However, essentially everything else about Metroid Dread is perfect, making for an entry that in many ways feels like the shining pinnacle of the series thus far. Movement feels incredible. It's so fluid. Like, I cannot say enough about how good it feels to just run around. Combat is deeper and more satisfying than ever, with some incredible boss battles. The moveset is massive, and no other Metroid game has done a better job of crafting puzzles to utilize all these abilities. The cutscenes look bafflingly good. The story absolutely delivers and makes great use of series lore. The Emmy sections are really frustrating at first, but all the more satisfying when you figure out how they work. And they inject the game with several large doses of that titular dread. And the best part? It's short. Not quite Bowser's Fury short, but just short enough that I can run through it infinite times, like infinity times. Like, I've played it more times than I can count, and I would happily start a new run right this moment. It feels so good to play. Upgrading from basic jump and shoot all the way up to your full kit never gets old. If you fight the bosses enough times, you can beat even the last one without taking a hit. It's just so well designed, so polished, so beautiful, so much dang fun that it never, ever gets old. Metroid Dread is easily one of the finest games I have had the pleasure of playing on my Switch. Yeah, they did Pikmin 4. They finally did Pikmin 4. And they would have had to screw up pretty bad for it not to make this list. But no, they didn't screw up. In fact, they gave us a Pikmin game I would have never, ever expected. Considering the series as a whole, considering Miyamoto's whole design philosophies, I could have never guessed they would pull a complete 180 and give me the kind of Pikmin experience I, Arlo, personally would love, and one that almost felt like an apology for making us wait so long. Instead of a shorter experience with a focus on replayability, they blew the whole thing up and delivered several dozen hours of content. After Pikmin 3 hugely stripped back its gear system, 4 quadrupled down on collectible tools and items and tons of meaningful upgrades. Instead of a small cast of characters, this one has a huge cast and really expands the Pikmin universe. We can finally do stuff at night, which is awesome, obviously. Against all odds, they brought back caves! Like, what? It's like they found my pie-in-the-sky wish list. You know, all the stuff I would love, but I would never really expect, and delivered a good 2/3 of it. And on top of that, of course, this is the most streamlined, polished Pikmin gameplay I could have ever imagined, which is really saying something after 3. The game is most definitely not without its flaws. I completely admit that for nearly every plus I can list, some small bit of essence has been either lost or diluted. The bloated runtime does hurt replayability, and the abundance of dialogue can be rather overwhelming. The streamlined gameplay, Ochi especially, mitigates much of the raw challenge factor present in the other games. And don't get me started on how instead of truly being a universe-expanding next chapter, it's a completely unnecessary soft reboot of sorts. But over the years, I've really come to appreciate sequels that do something new, even if something old is lost, as long as the core spirit remains intact. And for all of its flaws, for all the ways it kinda misses the point of the older games, it excels all the more in other categories and in its own unique ways. This is a Pikmin experience unlike any other, and I think just the kind we needed after so long a wait. Plus, many of its flaws ended up being fixed after the fact with an update, so there you go. We got Pikmin 4. We got Pikmin 4. Say whatever else you will about the Nintendo Switch. It gave us Pikmin stinkin' 4. I have surprised myself by putting Pikmin 4 below Super Mario Odyssey on this list. I like Mario a lot, like he's cool, but I am a Pikmin freak, and yet I simply can't deny the impact Super Mario Odyssey had on me, and how it perfectly encapsulated the unbridled joy and excitement and this newfound Nintendo-related optimism of that first year of Switch. After the universal acclaim and success of Galaxy and 3D World, I was certain that linear Mario was the new standard. And yet here, at the very beginning of a Nintendo generation so brimming with promise, here was the Mario game of my dreams. The first sandbox Mario since Sunshine. Bigger than ever, so much bigger. Instead of 120 power moons with only like 60 needed to beat the story, now there are tons. There are just tons. They're everywhere, encouraging me to comb through every inch of the world. The different kingdoms are all so distinct, so interesting, playing with such creative themes, home to a bunch of funky new races. Strangeness, creativity, surprise. This is a Mario game that wants to set itself apart. ever to explore as many new ideas as possible. And the capture mechanic offers an abundance of variety. There are so many unique transformations, so many gameplay modes to play with. And Super Mario Odyssey shares one quality with multiple of its first-party contemporaries. The gameplay is so refined and enjoyable that this by itself is enough to consider this title one of my absolute favorites. You can get into these nuanced debates about game design, how there are too many moons for them to feel meaningful, how the visual theming lacks cohesion, all these totally valid arguments, but from where I'm sitting, no other Mario game feels this good to play. Just as Flood was able to dramatically elevate Sunshine, which was otherwise extremely flawed, Cappy is one huge reason Odyssey is my absolute favorite Mario game to pick up and play. His range allows you to interact easily with objects, flowing quickly and seamlessly in and out of captures. And of course, what he does for Mario's schmovement has made the game a speedrunner's delight. It's incredible what you can accomplish with one plumber and one hat. It's a system that's just as deep as you want it to be and offers so much flexibility and control over Mario's trajectory. Super Mario Odyssey is a great game all on its own. It probably would be my very favorite 3D Mario game ever, even in a bubble. But in the context of 2017, Nintendo's sudden redemption, the bold new frontier that was the Switch, this triumphant return to the classic 3D Mario formula created a core gaming memory for me that I will always treasure. And now for number 1. Cue Wistful Piano. You want to talk about core gaming memories. Games that defined a generation. It's a similar story to Mario. Skyward Sword was a good game in its own ways, but it wasn't the kind of Zelda game I was looking for. And it showed us a Nintendo that didn't trust the player, wanted to keep them on a tight leash. One that held convoluted gimmicks on the very highest pedestal. One that didn't quite seem to know what to do with Zelda anymore. I was starting to lose hope for the series. And then came Breath of the Wild. A game which aimed to right every one of Skyward Sword's wrongs. A completely opposite experience in every possible way. And at the time, the boldest new direction the series had taken since Ocarina of Time itself. A complete reinvention. Not just an open world, but a massive, massive one. A staggeringly huge one. One where you can go anywhere at any time, climb any surface as long as you've got the stamina or an alternate method. Oh, we weren't just taken off the rails. We were given freedom on a level we could never have fathomed. And the mechanics. The series had toyed with so many mechanics over the years, but suddenly we had fully realized versions of so many of them, all working together now, all combining into one cohesive experience, as though Zelda had been working toward this exact point all along. This final realization. The big focus on physics systems felt like pure magic. How could all of these elements mesh together so perfectly? How could there be so many layers upon layers of interactivity? Who could have imagined a Zelda game that encouraged so much experimentation, where one player's experience could be vastly different from another's? Freedom and exploration are some of the qualities I value most in games, and here was a Zelda game that was so vast, so wide open, with so much to discover and try and simply marvel at. It was almost like waking up to a second life. And of course, just as surprising was the atmosphere. After the series' often cartoonish, bombastic, very talky history, here was a Zelda that was quiet. Unflinchingly quiet, understated, subtle. Like our own natural world, it provided limitless opportunity, but made no immediate demands. The goals laid out for Link felt like mere suggestions. There was no companion character or even a traditional tutorial, despite the new mechanical depth. Nintendo trusted me, and I was taught naturally through subtle signposting, my own experimentation, and only a handful of button prompts. This made for a very refreshing gameplay experience, but also dramatically impacted the game's feel. You are unhurried as you explore this world. And what a world to explore. This vast kingdom, from corner to corner, is a reflection of the cyclical nature of existence, a meditation on the delicate balance of life and death. A whole civilization decimated by the forces of evil, pushed to the very brink of oblivion. So then, why is there infinite beauty to be found in this place? There's a sense of peace that permeates Hyrule, and yet that peace silently whispers of the horrors that preceded it by its very existence. The dark history of this place is always within arm's reach, so time spent here is constantly punctuated by intense pangs of melancholy. No Nintendo game has ever said so much with so few words. I think on paper, Tears of the Kingdom is a superior game. I also feel that a goodly portion of this game's novelty has worn off somewhat, largely thanks to Tears of the Kingdom's failings. I don't know if this is what I actually want Zelda to be moving forward, and only time will tell if this game will end up representing a bold new direction for the series or a hard turn that eventually veered it off course again. But once again, my initial experience with Breath of the Wild was powerful. What it seemed to mean for the future of the series, and playing it day one on my Switch, and what that meant for the future of Nintendo. It was magic. Pure magic. The kind of gaming experience that perhaps only happens a few times in a person's life, and that has only become more and more rare as I've aged and as the industry develops. I know it was originally supposed to be a Wii U game, but Breath of the Wild was the Switch for me. It was my first experience with the system, and the one I'll always look back on most fondly. My number one, no doubt about it, all-time favorite Nintendo Switch game. That first-party list is my definitive Switch top 10, but now, for the sake of conversation, let's combine these two lists into one ultimate top 10. Whoosh. Number 10, Monster Hunter Rise. I had an incredible time with it, but the grindy nature lends itself a little more to in-the-moment dopamine farming than long-term impact, so it's a little lower on the list. Number 9, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It's a game I appreciate very deeply on an artistic level, but not one I've ever found myself playing obsessively, so it's also a little lower. Number 8, Blasphemous. Competition is already red hot now. I actually raised this game up the third parties list multiple times while writing this video. Somehow I keep underestimating just how great it is and how much I love it. Number 7, Pokemon Legends Arceus. I cannot deny that tapping into and delivering on decades of nostalgia is worth a whole lot of points. Being that immersed in the Pokemon world was something special. Number 6, Metroid Dread. That feel. Seriously, one of my all-time favorite games to replay. Like, top 5 in that category. Number 5, Pikmin 4. It's Pikmin. Number 4, Super Mario Odyssey. A wonderful source of both core gaming memories and lasting appeal. Number 3, Stardew Valley. Yeah, I really do love Stardew Valley that much. I told you it hooked me. And now it comes to this. This is agonizing. Okay. When it comes to experiences on Switch, like I said before, Breath of the Wild is it. Absolutely. But if this really is a for the sake of conversation list that's more about the games themselves, yeah, I gotta give it to Dark Souls. This game has only grown more enjoyable with time. My appreciation for what it accomplishes only deepens. It's gone from a stupid, pointless game I swore I would never play to perhaps my favorite game of all time. Personally, philosophically, existentially, maybe you could even say spiritually, this game speaks to me like no other game does. It teaches more serious life lessons than I ever thought a game could. Yeah, it really might be my favorite game ever. Sorry, Zelda. But there you have it. Those are my favorite Switch games. Those are the games that defined the generation, that brought me the most joy. And now we have a definitive, precise ranking. At least until I look at this list in a year and go, I put that on the list instead of that? Well, I put that game below that one? Oh, this is all wrong. I gotta redo this.